my favorite parts of the conference, which is a Q&A session with the creator, Ruby, and the creator of happiness in the programming world, Matz. So the way we'll do this is if you have a question, there's a mic here, and we'll line up at that mic to ask a question, and then he'll be up here answering the questions. We need some people to line up now to ask him questions.
JRuby was really impressive to see. Do you think that kind of sets the stage for, or might be a vehicle for Ruby 2.0?
I don't think so. The JRuby is a kind of subset in feature-wise, so it's not intended to be replaced any JRuby convenience or JRuby.
Would any of that coincide with maybe simplifying some of what Ruby is?
Yeah, the JRuby brought all together the data variables like a data something all together, and then it doesn't have some interesting feature like I/O or something to be platform independent. So I don't think I'm going to replace the Ruby 2.0 by JRuby.
Hi. Two questions. Can I do? Yes, I'm pulling rank right now to ask two questions. Actually, I'll ask one and then we'll get back in line. So the first question is are there plans for Heroku/Salesforce to sponsor/pay for more full-time people to work on JRuby or MRI? I like to call it MRI. It is the way it should be called.
Yeah, for the first question, for the fiscal reason of this year, we are not going to hire in this fiscal year, but yes, we are going to hire more, at least one or two. So I would aspire with the CEO of the Heroku to prepare the budget for more people, at least. And also, as I expressed in the keynote, I already asked other companies to hire more, and I hope they decide to hire more.
Okay, great. Thank you.
What is your favorite Ruby 1.9.3 and Ruby 2.0 feature? Your favorite two. Your favorite feature of the release that's coming up right now, and your favorite feature that you hope will be in Ruby 2.0. Or you can answer one or the other two.
One of three has we can configure the garbage parameter like the model limits or something. That would be my favorite feature for 1.9.3. And then for 2.0, I don't know, maybe module prepend, which can wrap the method afterwards, so that we do not have to use the ls method chain.
Hi. In the Ruby spec, it says a conforming processor may omit any invocation of a method of a built-in class or module for optimization purpose and do the same calculation as the method instead. In this case, even if a program redefines the method, the behavior of the program might not change. Well, sorry. Might not change because the redefined method might not actually be invoked. This is, for some core methods, the case in Ruby at the moment. Is there any chance we can get rid of that? So that if you call a method that is defined in C, in JRuby, it often just calls the C method, another C method, instead of going through the dispatch again. Is there any chance of always going through the dispatch again so you can actually redefine any method?
If I understand correctly, so that thing, so the prohibiting redefinition of the C-defined method is that decrease the flexibility of the language. Instead, so if some guys like Rubinius and the future YARuB, the 194, we have some kind of the inline cache which avoid dispatch in a sense, and or maybe we can do some kind of specialization, which is the specific version for specific type of arguments. So if the precondition, like I see the arguments are integers or something like that, is 5, that we call the specialized version, the specific compatible integer arguments, and then if not, so call the generic version. So that kind of optimization can be implemented in future, so that we don't have to.
So you would see it as in the future it would be possible to move more like actually calling methods and optimizing calling methods instead of just avoiding calling. Okay, thank you.
Without prohibiting any flexibility.
Hello.
Hi.
So, I believe in some past interviews, when you were asked if there were any features of Ruby that you wish you had done differently, you said something along the lines of, I wish I had inserted something like actors or something like that, some sort of more advanced parallelizing construct into the language. Since Ruby 2.0 will be a new major version, do you think we will see something like that put in at the language level, or do you think it will still be done with libraries?
Well, for Ruby 2.0, Ruby 2.0 will not be a big step from 1.9, just because we just made a huge step from 1.8 to 1.9. I don't want to make a huge step again this close. So maybe we are going to have the huge capacity changes would be in Ruby 3.0 or something in the future, but we are not going to do that in the near future. So even if we are going to add the actors in the language, it will be done by language in the near future.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Is the next Ruby going to be 1.9.4 or 2.0?
Okay, after releasing 1 and 3, we are going to have the make trunk to be 1.2.0. So even maybe we would have 1.9.4 in the future, but it's caused by some kind of the show-stopping dogs or something like in 1 and 3. So we plan to start 1.2.0.
Okay, so after 1.9.3 is released, trunk will be 2.0.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Hi, this is not a criticism directed at you. I say this just to try to explain some, like recently, I was trying to, I've been advocating Ruby at my company and teaching my coworkers how to use it in various things. And we have a number of cucumber tests for a product we're working on and many of the developers or QA people prefer to use Windows. And I was shocked when a system we were running on 1.9.2 took like 10 times longer to run our cucumber tests on Windows due to a require problem, I think it was a require problem, I'm not totally sure what it was. But we all had to just flee to JRuby. It was really, I'm just wondering my question is, do you think it's important that we focus more on Windows and Windows performance? Or do you think that's just, it's okay for us to just sort of say, use Mac or Linux?
Okay, I believe that particular problem was solved in 1.9.3.
Okay.
But the reason our Windows port is not as good as the Linux or Mac is just due to our lack of resource. So if somebody are willing to help us to improve the Ruby on Windows, so we are very welcome. So, and maybe some companies, some individuals would raise their hand to help us improve on Ruby. So we, out of many contributors, we only have the few Windows working on Windows. Only a few working on Windows. So
It's just an issue, you can't find the people who are interested in contributing in that area, is that?
yeah, before.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Hello.
Hi.
I actually also had a Ruby 2.0 question, although Aaron's question covered some of it, but I'm wondering, just especially since there's a lot of new people here that haven't heard previous keynotes, I don't want to make you give another keynote, but can you just sum up very quickly kind of 3 or 4 things about that you've got planned for Ruby 2.0, just for benefit of people who might not have heard you talk about it in the past?
Yeah, I don't have the list of the features in hand, but as I recall, as far as I recall, so we are going to add the module prepend, which I explained to Ivan, and the module mix, which replaced the module include, which we can avoid the priority order of the included method. And then we are going to have the keyword arguments in the core language. So we, for example, Ruby Rails use the keyword arguments to call inside, but we have to decompose the hash in the receiving side. But I'm going to add the automatic hash decompose for keyword arguments in the Ruby 2.0. And we are vaguely plan to add some kind of the selector namespace which can isolate the monkey patching in a certain module so that we can safely safely change the existing class without affecting the code outside of the specific namespace. And I think these are big features we are planning into the Ruby 2.0.
All right, thanks. Oh, there's a little behind me. All set to pep talk you.
First of all, thank you, Matz. I believe that the act of using signed code is a good idea, but the idea of forcing developers to sign their code is a bad idea. What are your thoughts on code signing in the Ruby community, non-existent as it is?
No, I haven't ever discussed about the code signing in the community, so that I think I can answer correctly right now. But for gems, so signing might be very interesting. So some basic architecture of the Ruby gem could be dangerous in some cases. So we often use the sudo Ruby gem to install something that install network from the third-party code. So that would be dangerous. That can be dangerous in some cases. So code signing might be reduce the risk from the Ruby gem installation. Yeah, maybe Eric can work on that.
Good morning.
Morning.
So, it's a very short question. When people say MRI, they're usually saying Matz is Ruby interpreter. When you say it, are you meaning my Ruby interpreter?
Well, I don't think so, just because MRI often include the Ruby 1.9, which core is done by the Koichi, so it's not my interpreter. I think the exact name of the interpreter should be the C implemented interpreter, originally written by by Matz and hacked by others.
That's too long, though.
What's the acronym for that?
So actually, so can I ask you 2 questions? Okay,
Sure.
thanks. So, well, that's a good question. This is a good setup for me. What name? What would you have us call it? Because I think me and Charlie started calling it MRI because we needed a name. I think that was before Ruby Core started calling it CRuby. So it was a long time ago. So do you have a name that you should we come up with a name maybe? Suggest some names?
Yeah, MR is okay.
Okay. So my real question was, is there something that the Ruby community can do, or a few things, so that to make Ruby 2.0 and further things easier or better or whatever? So like something that these people can, on Monday when they go back to their real jobs, they can think about and help with?
Yeah, last night I talked with Brian Ford that regarding Ruby spec, and we started. Yeah, we talked about we do something to accelerate the development of the language. You know, not in particular implementation. So that we will restart again the designer meeting we used to have on the IRC or something. And then at the same time, IRC's bandwidth is much better than Melodist, but still it's quite difficult to set up some kind of documentation or something like that. So we had no idea at that time, but we have to set up some kind of collaboration tool alongside the IRC.
Okay.
So do you have any idea? Basically.
I don't know. I mean, we'll come up with that. I mean, I think if we have like maybe a first meeting on IRC or something like that, we'll come up with something.
we will have that.
Okay.
Yeah, and we will.
So these people should go home and write Ruby specs?
Yeah, and Ruby spec needs more contributor.
Yeah.
So.
Very well. Thank you.
Hello. I was curious if Write, the Ruby Light project,
Yes.
is that continuing with sponsorship of Groovy, or is that all, you know?
The project, the originally called JRuby and now I call it JRuby, which is sponsored by the Japanese government. So it's separate issue.
Is it a subset of Ruby 2, or is it what is it more
It's
closely?
a subset of Ruby 1.9. This is compatible to 1.9. That's wise, yes.
And
then after, this is pretty nice. The source code of JRuby will be available in 6 months. So after that, it will be open source, so everyone can even work with it and can help improving JRuby. After
6
that.
months.
6 months.
All right.
So the other day in the panel, somebody had mentioned in the standard library something called sync. So I looked it up, and the Wi-Fi being spotty here, I checked the pickaxe. The pickaxe book said, this isn't a direct quote, but it's broken, we're not including it. So my question is, for Ruby 2.0, instead of adding new features, what's your opinion about cleaning up what's already there?
As I told you before, that Ruby 2.0 would not be a big step. So I think we are going to remove sometimes the deprecated libraries like English or something, some old libraries. And we might separate some of the standard library into gens, but we are not going to make the big change. But we might remove something, and we might separate some part of the standard library to the bundle of the Ruby gen.
So if you thought about some things to remove, what would some of those libraries be?
Yeah, we had some very old libraries like GetUp
Or Sync. Sync, perhaps?
I think, yeah.
Thanks.
Hi. One of the things that I found in general is Ruby is really nice and intuitive to use. One thing that surprised me was like the Japanese text support is not quite so straightforward and easy. And I just wondered what your thoughts
Japanese?
just processing text using Japanese text and stuff is not as natural as I might have expected. So I just wondered, like, is that because you've got a strong international focus? Or?
Yeah, it was too difficult to implement. Actually, handling Japanese text correctly is so difficult. So it's too big for me, a programmer like me.
But you're Japanese.
Well. You don't know how difficult it is. Okay. But yeah, I'm open. If somebody, maybe Japanese, willing to help me to handle better text handling library, so we do that. But it should be general.
I'm Max.
Hi.
Thanks. I don't have so much of a question as...
Okay, done. No,
So you mentioned before with Ruby 2.0 the module boxing, or class boxing, I forget what we're calling it now.
Class boxing.
And I wonder if you had given any thought to, there was a language called Dylan, which had multiple inheritance, so a little different, but one of the things that they did was the mechanism to find methods or constants was implemented in Dylan. So it was sort of a method resolution, constant resolution algorithm in Dylan. And I was wondering if we could, I mean, again, this is more of a suggestion request, but could we maybe think about ways of describing constant lookup in Ruby instead of relying on the C?
Well. For example, that in common list, the common object system has an made object protocol, which can define your own lookup order
Right.
In list, and which is in list everything matter. I don't know, just because by doing so it would slow down the performance very badly.
Yeah, that's my concern too. But
That's my concern. So maybe, but maybe the people behind the convenience would try.
yeah, that might be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, even just as a reference, if it ends up being implemented.
Yeah, just experiment at least.
Okay. Thank you.
How about you? Ian?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, he said that.
I'm just curious, do you run your Ruby code with the -W sign? With the W flag?
W?
Yeah, the flag, the warning flag.
W flag.
You use it?
Yeah. Sometimes.
So Matz, I'm wondering how old your kids are now and if you taught any of them Ruby.
Well, I have 4 kids, and the oldest one is already 19, but she has no interest in programming. That's sad. But still, as a father, so I don't want to force them to program. So my parents did not force me to do any programming. At least they objected for me to program. So, I think it is very important to have some kind of the internal motivation to program. So not given from outside. So if any of my children would have that kind of motivation to program in some language, I would definitely help them. And then even I would make some kind of tools to help them. But until now, they haven't shown any motivation.
Would you disown them if they use Python?
work is going to get the same standardization effort that ISO standard pack or whatever that core Ruby is getting?
Well, the basic functionality of mRuby is as defined in the ISO Ruby, so they are pretty similar on the accuracy as far as described in the standard.
So the standardization actually describes both of them and delineates the difference?
Yeah, ISO, first version of the ISO standard covers the very subset of the Ruby language, and then mRuby also conforms most of the standard, except the mRuby doesn't have I/O by default, and the ISO standard describes the I/O.
But are they going to differentiate within the standard what qualifies as, what you described as mRuby versus the full thing, or is it just going to be a subset of?
Could you do it?
I was just wondering if there's going to actually be a delineation in the standard of this is mRuby and this is the full Ruby, or is it you're going to have to guess?
Yeah, we are not going to add that kind of documentation that's in the description in the standard. So the Ruby in general should work like this. That's how we describe the behavior of the language in standard.
Is the next thing to implement a JRuby interpreter in mRuby? No, I'm kidding. That'd be awesome. But then it would be like MC Ruby. So the question I have is, when you're running a lot of Ruby processes, to measure performance or kind of introspect on the runtimes, there are plugins and various things that we use inside the environment, which kind of disrupts the environment. There are different runtimes now with Rubinius and JRuby. Is there some goal like JDM has Java by wire protocol and different kind of wire protocols to actually introspect to JDM? Is there anything that you're looking at to say, can we provide a similar function to Ruby runtimes such that things can collect data on them, performance data, things like object space type data, and for measurement and or debugging?
Well, in the separate narrowness, we are discussing about the grooving, like a grooving API, and for the near future version, we are going to add the dtrace into the language, and along with some kind of other grooving, not only for dtrace. So that will help to add the time functionality to the language.
Yesterday during Brian Ford's talk on Nikita, he was talking about making Rubinius orders of magnitude faster than it is now. I wonder if there are any hard goals for Ruby 2.0 in terms of performance, and if so, how you're kind of measuring those and going about hitting there.
Yeah, actually I'm not the performance specialist, but the Koichi told me that he would love to spend his time on improving performance. So I expect him to do great work as he did before.
Thanks.
What is the most important thing that Ruby programmers misunderstand about Ruby that we should study and learn better?
People are very easy to complain about the performance of the language, but the micro benchmark does not tell anything about the real application. So you have to. I want the Ruby programmers to learn about the performance behavior on the real application. So we have bottleneck there here, so it cannot be determined by the micro benchmarks. So it's performance tuning is kind of like science. So you have to the analyze there. So learn how to do.
Give Matz an applause.